the road again, going places that I've never been.
Hi there, this is Martin from Expedition Motorhomes. I want to give you some tips about driving your RV. I know you're going to be a little bit worried about it, but the driving part does not have to be as anxiety promoting as you might think. So let's talk a little bit about some of the basics. First thing is we're going to talk about driving forward. You need to remember that all the rules of the road apply to an RV just like a car. So the lanes, the changing the lanes, diamond lane, all that, the rules for RVs are the same as for cars. When you're driving forward, remember that the motorhome is very heavy. In fact, they will weigh anywhere between 14,000 pounds or 7 tons for a small Class C, all the way up to 14 tons or 28,000 pounds for a large Class A. Because of that weight, you're going to need a lot of braking distance behind the next car. So we recommend 5 to 8 times your normal distance for driving behind the car in front of you to give you plenty of room to stop. It'll take you a little while to get used to that, but give it a few times and you'll be really comfortable with that. When you're driving forward, you're going to run into a couple of conditions on the road. First of all, I recommend driving not in the slow lane, but in the second lane to the slow lane. Slow lane has too much traffic merging and pulling off, and you're going to be slowing down and speeding up a lot, and it's going to make driving a little bit more worrisome. Stay in that second lane. When you're approaching a hill and you see a hill coming up, get some good running distance going and get a good start at that hill. It's going to be very difficult for you to accelerate up the hill, so you want to start at a good high speed when you're at the bottom of the hill, if at all possible. If you can't make that and you get stuck behind a truck, you know what? You're going to have to stay behind the truck until you get to the top of the hill, because you're probably not going to be able to pass that truck while you're going up the hill. You've got a very strong engine. It's going to be somewhere around 300 to 350 horsepower, but you've also got a heavy motorhome that it's trying to pull, so that won't be successful. Now when you get to the top of the hill and you're going down the other side, that same weight that was holding you back when you're going uphill now is going to try to push you down that hill and make you accelerate. So you want to make sure and control your speed at the top of the hill. You can look down that hill and you're going to see if it's long or short, and you're going to say, okay, I need to do some braking here. The one thing that you do not want to do, and this is very important, is to ride the brakes, which means to keep your foot depressed on the brakes with constant pressure. That will create so much frictional heat on the brakes that the brakes will, in a very short time, ignite into fire. And I'm talking about 15 to 20 seconds of time. That's entirely possible. So be sure to not ride the brakes. Here's what you can do instead. Number one is you can pump the brakes. So starting at the top of the hill, before you've gone too fast, you can start pumping those brakes. Depress it with constant pressure, then let it go. When it speeds up a little bit more, depress the brakes again, and then let them go. That should do it for most hills. If you still are going too fast, and that's not stopping you or slowing you adequately enough, and the second thing that you want to do is you want to downshift and use your transmission. So an automatic transmission, you can downshift into third gear, and that together with the pumping the brakes, those two things will keep you well in control and at a safe speed going down a hill. So now we've covered going forward. A couple of things we want to talk about: the size of the motorhome. First of all, the height of the motorhome is going to be 12 feet, so you need at least a 12.5-foot clearance. Class A motorhomes, especially the diesel pushers, will probably need about 13-foot clearance. So that definitely eliminates underground parking garages and drive-thrus like McDonald's and Taco Bell. The width of the motorhome, the body itself is 8 feet, but the important thing to remember is that you have your side view mirrors on each side, and the outside of the left side view mirror and the outside of the right side view mirror is 10 feet. So you must drive down the middle of the lane on the freeway in order to make sure that both of your side view mirrors are in the lane with you. If you track off to the side, obviously your mirror is going to go into the next lane and it could possibly be hit by another vehicle or an obstruction of some kind. So that's going forward. All right, so now when we're backing up, there's one important thing to remember is that you should always have somebody to pilot you when you go back. Even though you may have a backup camera in the motorhome, you cannot rely on that backup camera. It is not accurate enough and it doesn't see enough to be able to get a whole picture of what is behind you. So you must always have somebody behind you. You must always be able to see them in your side view mirror. That's very important because you don't want to accidentally run over them, right? And so they should pilot you. When they do pilot you, they should make sure that you don't run over anything. So they should be watching you down towards the ground. And equally important is that they should be watching your roof to make sure that you don't hit a tree branch. So if we do those two things, you'll be really good backing up, but you always need somebody to help you back up. So now we've covered driving forward, driving back. And the next thing we want to cover is making turns. And there's one good rule about making turns. And that rule is make slow, wide turns. The motorhome is very long, so it cannot make a sharp turn. It cannot make a turn if you're trying to make a right turn, for instance, to go from the curb lane from the street that you're exiting to the curb lane in the street that you're trying to enter. That will never happen. You will cut that curb and you'll cause damage to the side of the motorhome. So you must make a wide turn. Make sure you use your turn signal and go slow. The traffic around you will see what you're going to do and they'll move out of your way. They'll either speed up or they'll drop behind you. One thing to remember is that the back end of the motorhome does swing out into the next lane of traffic when you're turning. This is unique to a motorhome. No other vehicle does that. So it's important for you, while you're making the turn, to watch in your side view mirror where your tail end is going. If you make that turn really slow and wide, the swing out on your tail end will be minimal, like 3 feet. If you try to make a sharper turn, then that swing out will be much greater, let's say 7 to 8 feet. And you can just imagine what kind of a problem that might cause if you were 7 to 8 feet into the next lane. The way you watch it is with your side view mirrors. So if you're making a right turn, your tail end is going to swing out to the left, so you're going to watch your left side view mirror. If you're in the other case, if you're making a left turn, your rear end is going to swing to the right, so you're going to use your right side view mirror. It's going to take a little bit of practice. We'd be happy to do that when we do the walkthrough with you and if you need to have some test drive. But that's the basic principle of it. So we've talked about going forward, we've talked about going backwards, we talked about making a right turn, making a left turn. The last thing, and it's rather minor, but I sure want to cover it, is going in and out of driveways. The same principle that we have in swinging out when making a right turn and a left turn, that principle also occurs when we're going in and out of driveways. So just picture this in your mind's eye for a moment. The motorhome pulls out of a parking lot and approaches a street. You start pulling into the street and your front wheels go down the drive into the gutter on the street. When your front wheels go down into that gutter, your tail end, which is like by the rear bumper, goes up. Front end goes down into the gutter, tail end goes up. Then you continue to move into the street. The front wheels now go up into the street, and your tail end does what? You're right, it goes down. When it goes down, it will scrape. And when it scrapes, it sounds terribly loud and terribly scary. So there's a couple of things that we can do to prevent that from happening or to try to avoid that. The main thing is to go out of the driveway at an angle. Never go out straight, but go out at an angle. The greater the angle you have, the more the tail end will stay up when it goes down, and the greater chance you have of avoiding any damage. Damage from scraping when you're going out of the motorhome can be large and expensive. So it's important to remember these two principles. Number one, go out very, very slowly. And number 2, go out at an angle. The sharpest angle you can do, the better it is. I think that should do it for driving tips for a while. If you want us to talk about it again at the walkthrough, we can sure do that with you during a test drive also. We're happy to do that. Thank you very much, and happy driving.
Seeing things that I may never see again. I can't wait to get on the road again.